Okay, Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Haboim, Aleichem Shalom. This week we're on Parshas Bei. So everybody knows Bei is Bei's Aleph. Beis is 2, Aleph is 1, it's 3. It's 3 makkos left over from the 10 makkos that I didn't get it. And for some reason, but we may able to touch on that, it's separated from the other 7 makkos. Seemingly should have been all of the makkos together. One Parsha. This Parsha talking about Yetzias Mitzrayim. Okay, we'll see. So what are the makkos? Arbe, Cheshech, darkness, makkos Pcheres, the death of the oldest, of the firstborn. So one of the explanations for the makkah of darkness, for the plague of darkness, says because that there were between the Jewish people were people who did not deserve to come out. So see what was supposed to mean. And therefore, they died in the plague of darkness, that the Egyptians shouldn't see that the Jewish people are also losing people. So there's different opinions how many people died, but I think Rashi is taking the opinion that there was 4/5, right? 80% of the Jewish people died. Why? So it's not only Rishonim that died, or not Knesset Rishonim died, because majority by Kriyas Yamsuf still said that the Elohev David is over Elohev David, that the Jewish people were idol worshiping, still worshiping idols till the last minute. Even so that they wanted to call Pesach, that was already some rejection of the Zohar, but still the Kippur was on them. So that means that the people who worshipped idols still were allowed to came out. Who did not come out? The people who didn't want to leave Mitzrayim. So let's ask a simple question. So let's focus a little bit on that idea of the 80% that did not come out and the 20% that came out. How come 80% of the Jews did not want to come out of Mitzrayim? It says they were screaming to the Eibush, they were shouting, they were tortured, Veda Kosher Chema, Veda Sperach, especially by the end. When Nushmari made it even harder. Why didn't they want to go out of Mitzrayim? The question becomes, we're talking about the 8 makkos in the Mitzrayim. The Mitzrayim already broke down. They already said, Parit, send them away. And the reason why that Parit didn't break down is not because he didn't break down, because Hashem hardened his heart. So, but the Jewish people, Hashem didn't harden their heart. So why didn't they want to come out? Why couldn't? I mean, it said that even the Egyptians should know that Ani Hashem, that I'm the God, I'm the boss of the whole world, I'm the creator. And here the Jewish people want to stay in Mitzrayim. So we're not going to go too much into Pshat. In Pshat, I'm sure there's different things we could say, but that's one question. Why didn't they want to come out? That means there's something about going out from Mitzrayim that's very hard to want it. Then we have interesting mitzvah in this week Parsha. Doesn't even from the makkos, but the first mitzvah of Torah from Kiddush HaChedesh, sanctified in the new month, right? The blessing we say on the connection to the birth of the new moon. Kiddush Levana, we call it sanctifying the moon. We are making it holy, whatever that's supposed to mean. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, did not understand how to do it. Hashem had to show him exactly what the new moon looks like. Was there nothing to understand? There's the birth of the new moon, how it started. When you see something, that's seemingly Allah like the new moon. So Hashem had to show it him. Then, so the question is, why is that the first mitzvah? First mitzvah means that's in a certain way is the most important mitzvah. So we're saying one of the things that says that the Jew is compared to the moon. The Jewish people are compared to the moon. The non-Jews are compared to the sun. The Jewish people are compared to the moon. What means they are compared to the moon? So basically it says, but the Goyim, they are the sun, always the same thing. There's no changes. The sun is every day the same thing. It's closer, farther, but basically the sun is the same. But the moon, you have ups and downs. The moon comes in and grows every day, becomes bigger and bigger. It comes to complete moon, then becomes smaller and smaller till it disappears completely. So it always changes. That's the idea of the Jewish people are compared to that, the info on the moon, that it has changes completely. Okay, so let's see like that. So let's first try to ask ourselves, what is the real, because the moon is changing, that's why the Jewish people, what is the real deeper connection, relationship between the Jew and the moon? Now, in the moon, we said they have the 15th of the month, it has a now the moon is complete. And just before Rosh Chodesh, the moon disappears. What is the higher level point in the moon? When it's completely shining, or when it doesn't exist? Let's talk about that. So obviously, what we will say that it shows that the idea of humility, the idea of, right? So in order to go to a higher level, you have to nullify yourself from the previous idea. But normally, when you want to go to a higher level, you learn level A, data preparation for level B. And B is like disappearing. It means you're erasing. Why? How is that the preparation? So more correctly, when do we say A is a preparation to B and B to C, so forth? And when do we say that you have to nullify yourself completely in order to go to a higher level? Okay, so let's start we'll try to connect these two inyanim, why the Jewish people didn't want to go out to Mitzrayim, 80% didn't want to go out to Mitzrayim. And also today, as much as we're saying Ad Mosai, and we want Mashiach now, we're still not saying it looks wholeheartedly, because it says clearly in Sforim, and the Rabbi said it also, if you would ask Ad Mosai, ask for Mashiach with an emes, Mashiach would have been here. Why is it so hard? Because it says our redemption is compared to the redemption from Mitzrayim. So we see that the same problem appears now also. And as we said, that's the first mitzvah. Okay, so let's start with the question what the Jewish people at 80% did not want to go out, and the first mitzvah is the idea of the Levanon. So it says there's a principle that we know, yesh mi yesh has to have ayin be'emtza. If you want to make one thing to something else, has to first disappear the first thing. Now the question, if it's ayin be'emtza, if there's nothing in the middle, so then there's nothing. Half from nothing comes something. Also, we see an interesting idea that said the Baal Shem Tov said that he could have gone up to heaven just like Eliyahu Navi, beat his body, but he decided not to go up. He wanted to go, offer baso, you're coming from earth, from dust, offer tashuv, return to dust. What is the advantage of going back to dust? Okay, so saying as follows, that a Jew, when we have something, right, and if you break it, then you're left with nothing. But when we were saying that the idea has when there's something that you make him to nothing, he has a deeper level of existence. right? Then he will able to go become bigger. So let's take the moon a second. Let's compare it to a person learning something, learning a piece of Gemara or Shemaimer, and he starts learning and he hears what it says, and then he learns it better and he understands it better. That part, that's what he's learning. Till he comes, he understands it properly. He understands it to the best of his ability. What happens now? So simply say, okay, now go and connect the next piece. Probably it's a good idea. But when you're talking about the moon, so I'm saying the moon, the birth of the moon means it's the beginning of a new idea forms in the head of the person or in the life of the person, and that becomes bigger and better and more clearly and more, and it takes over completely that he has a right perception and appreciation, understanding of life. What is the purpose of life? I'm not talking about just idea of outside of him. What is the purpose of life? What is the meaning of life? What is his satisfaction of life? That he feels good about himself, that he has a real purpose to fulfill satisfying and purpose in life. Then what happens, he comes to a complete understanding. Then he starts suddenly having a question of that. He has a question of that. Baal Shem Tov said, on every question he has an answer, on every answer there is a question. And when you come to completely understanding, then I'm talking in your brain, but talking about in your appreciation of in life, what life is all about, suddenly you have an appreciation, a revelation, a touch of a revelation from a higher level comes. It says, no, that's not satisfactory. And you have a question. No. If it's learning a piece of Gemara, after you finish understanding 100%, then suddenly you'll have a question on what you understood. If not, it means you didn't understand it properly 100%. When you understand something clearly, the next step, I'm not saying you shouldn't go further. I'm just saying, but talking from the point of view of understanding and appreciation of purpose, of meaning of life, of the absolute quality of life. When you have an appreciation, then you become uncomfortable. Why? Because you become a keli, you become a vessel to appreciate something higher than you, higher than what you understood. Then you have one question. The next day, that's what it means the moon becomes smaller. The next stage, you have another question. Now, the second question is not only on quantity questions, they are mainly quality questions. Okay, so till you have more questions and more, and that means the light from a higher level that shines to you becomes more and more, and you come to appreciate that the way you're seeing it till now, if it's the piece of the Gemara, if it's the piece of the mind, if it's your appreciation of life, is not satisfactory. Until you erase it completely. That mamish, and that is completely, that nothing, the Gemara, you don't understand the word in the Gemara, you have 1,000 questions on the Gemara. Now, let's be honest, there's many people who learn Shas by heart, learn plenty, and they never came to that point where they understood something clear and then be able to start asking questions to make it completely nullifying the idea of understanding. Okay, so that's, but a real learner, a real person will have, because there is the depth in the Gemara and in the Maimer and in life, it's a much higher level. So when you complete one level, it has to start shining you a higher level, but the higher level is first is rejecting, demolishing the previous level. Till you come completely have nothing, have mamish, doesn't make sense to a point. Sometimes it says that the questions, if it's in life questions, that the person doesn't want to live anymore. He has no purpose. It's completely broken, completely disappears. It means not only he has questioned that the idea is completely destroyed, but also in himself, emotionally, you could say, and intellectually, completely nullified completely. What happens then? Then comes the birth of the new moon. Because a person is able to be in a level where he's completely nullified, then he becomes a level opening to something higher than him. Suddenly has, like we call it, let's call it for a second, flesh. There's something higher, completely higher idea that comes into his head. And this idea, he couldn't understand it before. Because this new idea is completely beyond for example, I'll give you just it says when a person passes away from this world, what happens? Let's say he has to go to Gan Eden. There was a tzaddik, or sometime in every yahrzeit said that the neshama has to go to Nehar Dinu, a river of fire. Why does he have to go a river of fire? Because when a person comes from this world, first let's talk from this physical world, with perception of the physical world means limitation in very fine level. Okay, even he goes out of the body, when he takes off all the limitation, but there still remains stains, what called impressions of limitation from this world, that he wouldn't be able to appreciate properly the Gan Eden, what he has to go in, what he deserves to get in, and he's going in there. So therefore, the first thing he has to do, he has to nullify, he has to go to a river of fire that to deep in the deeper means to nullify is all his previous perceptions and understandings. It means the quality of the understanding he has to erase. Because if you're coming with any kind of definitions like time and space, so you impose it on the level of Gan Eden that you're coming in, so you will not be able to appreciate the level of Gan Eden properly. That is from the physical world to the spiritual world, to Gan Eden. That's why it says generally most of tzaddikim passing by, how to know is in another way they would say passing by the gates of Gehenna, just pass by there. But the idea is you have to clean up everything, all the quality of your existence from before to be able to come to higher quality. And similar to that happens in the yahrzeit. Because in the yahrzeit, the neshama has to have a big aliyah, a tremendous elevation. So the previous level of Gan Eden, his perception is disturbing him to have a real elevation, a higher elevation. And therefore he has to go through again, it says in the yahrzeit, he goes to a Nehar Dinu, a river of fire, cleansing him now from Gan Eden that he was this year before, to be able to go to a higher level. What is that? And let's go back to the idea of learning. When a person learns, he has a certain quality of understanding. I'm talking quantity, I'm talking about the quality of understanding, right? Then when he has all the questions, when he is demolished, nullified, the quality of his understanding, that not only yes, the technical question, how much is 1 + 1 is 2. You don't have to nullify yourself before you know 1 + 1 or after you know that 1 + 1. But when you're talking about the whole quality of understanding something, it's a different quality completely. So when do we go from A to B? If the idea is the same, if it's quantity, then for sure, not only it's not disturbing, the previous level is helping you to understand it better. Even the higher level is not only more information, even if it's a higher level, but it's still the core of the limitation of the lower level remains in the higher level normally. Even so more refined, take for example, you take sand, yes, they are saying there's more refined sand. And then there is sand from more precious sand. And you could go higher and higher in sand, which is sand from gold, whatever. But it's still the basic idea, the premise, the core idea of the limitation of the idea still remains the same thing. And therefore, that you could understand, you could go. But when you're saying that you have to go into a level that is higher than you, infinitely higher than you, then you have to disappear completely. But if you disappear, you don't exist. How does it help? So then the question is, who are you? If you have an infinite depth, then you disappearing is opening the next level, what we call infinitely higher than the previous level, and you go to a higher level. If you're a limited being by destroying, by breaking it, but not demolishing it, then you'll be nothing. So therefore, when we are talking about the Jewish people, because they have an infinite level of the neshama in themselves, so it's not only from limitation to infinity. I would almost say like infinite compared to your level where you come before. Take a simple example. The idea of logic compared to a physical thing is infinitely higher. Physically, you could touch, you could see it. Logic, you cannot see it. But ultimately, I have to say, I don't want to have time to explain too much, that logic is not really infinitely high. The logic that we understand in this world is still with the limitation, with definition of physical, of time, space, and existent and not existent. The not existent is also in our world. But when you have to go to a higher level, completely higher than all the 10 spheres of this world, not only of the malchus of this sphere, not only of the midas of this sphere, not only the speech, thought, speech, and action of this world, but even from the emotions of this level, even from the highest level of intellect in this level. In other words, the highest level of intellect in that level where you are is very, very deep. It's almost like very refined, very deep. I mean, it is very refined. But now we're saying no, even that as refined as it is, it's not good enough because you're still limited in a very refined level to that level where you're coming from. Therefore, you will be completely nullified. You go to the river of fire. And then you're able to start picking up the birth of the new moon means a new infinitely idea that beyond you that suddenly clicks into by you. Because you don't exist, the previous level doesn't exist. So what reveals itself, would say, the deeper level in yourself, what is infinitely higher. And then that you have a glimpse of it, a touch of that, and then start to getting a hold of it and you're building it up. And then your new world is your new world. If you feel more comfortable, if coming from the Elam Asiya Gashmis to Elam Hayitzire, Asiya Gashmis to Asiya Ruchnis, to Yitzire, to Bria. It's a completely different, I would say it's infinitely higher, one world from the other. Why? Because even in the first world, in Asiya Ruchnis, it's also, I would say, in a certain level, in the level of Elam Asiya, it's also infinite. To speak in the physical, we'll be talking about space and time and distance, what we are, it's almost relatively to our world, it's infinite. Especially going to emotional, deeper emotionals, music, refined ideas, especially when you go to intellect, even a deeper level. So it's infinite. But still, at what point do we say that you go up higher and higher in this world? You mean you go infinitely higher and higher, but not really infinite. It comes a point that you finish with this world, you go to a higher world. So many people go higher and higher, but they're still in the same world. And they're really going higher. I mean, if you hear them explaining, you'll blow your mind completely. You're completely breaking everything you know before. Like I said, a table compared to logic, a table compared to emotions. And in a deeper level, emotions compared to logic, to real logic, not logic, what we call logic. This logic of our logic is very much touched, but I'm talking about even Neila Masiyah, real logic. But to go to a higher world, you have to completely disappear. And then you come to the higher level and you're coming to still going higher and higher and higher. And that's what the difference between the Jewish people and the non-Jewish people. The Jew has in himself an essence, an infinite essence. What is essence, I would say, is even higher than infinite, whatever that's supposed to mean. And therefore, he has the ability to disappear and to come completely infinitely high and build up completely and again start going down. Now, what's the higher level? We ask, what's the higher level? When you does it don't exist or when you exist? Somebody could afford not to exist is a much higher level. So the real depth, in a way, of the Jew comes in the idea where he doesn't exist. But it's not so comfortable because you're a person by nature. The level of existence that you exist is also a level of unity. It's a low level of unity, but that is the dominating, the controlling level that you're living with. So you want to be. So that should help us a little bit. Why the people didn't want to go out of Mitzrayim? It wasn't only, as we spoke before, not only a physical going out of Mitzrayim. They realized that they have to completely be nullified. They didn't want to be nullified. It's interesting, 80%, right, is 4/5. So we're talking about there was 100 is 5 20s, 5 times 20. So in Neshama, here was a nefesh, neshama, chai, yechide. That means that the 80% of the neshama, I'm not talking in the spiritual level, not talking about in physical numbers, and therefore could be there was a place in the numbers because it was mainly, I'm not saying if it was 80% not, but I'm saying there's an argument in different opinions. But basically, we're talking about in the spiritual level. The level of nefesh, ruach, and neshama, and chaya do not want to be nullified. Why? Because they're limited in their existence, what they existed. Only the level of Yechide has the appreciation because it is not beyond existent. So no matter what level you will come, he will be able to go to the Yechide of the idea. Yechide, the idea means that idea that's beyond its existence. When that level is also the levels of Asiya, Yetzirah, Bria, Atzilus, even Atzilus is still part of the four elements. And that's Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chai, and Yechide is higher than Atzilus even. So therefore, the Jewish people didn't want to go out. Now, but the normal thing is not to want to go out from Mitzrayim. Practically, to explain it, that's not for now. If you look at the Meforshim, you could say, I would think a very simple idea. They were already a year, they were not tortured already. So they were having this. So they forgot what it was. We have a selective memory that we forget about the suffering. But I'm talking about in the Pnimis Inyanim here. Therefore, the Jews compared to the moon. The moon expresses in the physical sense, we know it's nothing happening there, that you see the light, you don't see the light, on the other side. But it represents the idea that the Jew has, that he has to constantly go infinitely higher than himself. And that's why a chedesh in Lashon Chidush, it's a new idea has to come. The Lishono, it means repetitive, Lishnot. But a Jew in his, every aspect of his life, he has to be able to go completely beyond himself. And that's to the Giloi Yechide. And that's why the Jew is saying the four levels, the lower levels didn't want to go out from Mitzrayim. And probably that could be the explanation also why it's not easy to ask for Mashiach. Because our subconsciously understand that when Mashiach comes, what will happen? The revelation that there's nothing beside God. So we'll be nullified. Yes, you'll be a much deeper being. You'll be in a level of absolute, of the essence of godliness. But that we don't appreciate what it is. That's to us a story. But my existence in all aspects will disappear. So do I want it? Naturally, I don't want it. And therefore, it's so important to want Mashiach, because to want Mashiach means you have to come in touch with your Yechide. And that is the idea when you go out of Mitzrayim. If you go out of the limitations of Nefesh, of Ruach, of Neshama, of Chayah, that's not really out of Mitzrayim. You have to go out from the limitation of Chayah also. Go over and move it to touch, have a Yechide, then you're able to want to go out of Mitzrayim. So when you have a touch of Yechide, that's through the Inyanim, to learning in Torah, the Inyanim about Yechide, learning about Geula redemption, because they're learning the Inyanim in Torah, but Mashiach is touching that level of your Neshama. That's in that level of Yechide. So could be, let's go back to a few questions, but yes, why is it the first mitzvah? Because it's the fundamental mitzvah. That's the essence course of all the mitzvahs, that you to do a mitzvah in a way you have to be able completely to become one with the mitzvah. And that's why it said that means Be'el Pare, because here came the idea of Moshe Rabbeinu had to go into Pare, to the deepest level of Pare. Moshe Rabbeinu was afraid of it, because he knew he's going into the absolutely core of negativity and destroy it, right? Not only for himself, for the Jewish people. And that's the beginning of redemption, where the Jewish people had the idea of a touch of the Yechide. And therefore, we could say that you have to take a shepsel and attach it to their bed. But really, it took a risk here. They were idol worshippers. They were worshipping the idols like the Egyptian, obviously also the shepselach, the goat and the sheep. So what do you tell him to keep it 4 days in his house? But that was already after we took out the 80% of the people, and 80% of the level is not nefesh, not ruach. They managed to touch the level of Yechida of the Jew, even so they were idol worshipping. But they touched the Yechida, therefore they were able to control it, and we had to give it a manifestation to keep it 4 days next to your bed, and not only not to bow down to it, but even to then with the idea that you're going to shecht it, you're going to kill it, and to serve the Eibishter. I think there's a korban. So therefore, that's me saying the idea of Parsha is the idea of our Parsha Bay is the idea of the exodus from Mitzrayim. The real exodus from Mitzrayim is when you go out from any kind of limitation. Yes, what you call today absolute out of all limitations, and that's absolute infinity, tomorrow that becomes your limitation. But today, you have to go out to the finest, most deepest quality of limitation that you have to go out. Okay, I hope you answer some of your question. Okay, Hatzlacha Rabbi, call to, and we should have to get the Geula now, go out of Mitzrayim, have the Mashiach now in Beis Hamikdash, Kiddush Kodashim, the whole Jewish nation now, Begashmis, call to. Bye.